Good evening again. I'd like to call the January 23rd, 2025 Marine Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:22 PM. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Allen. Here. Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Doherty.
Here.
Mr. Burchett. Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Ms. Marcus.
First, we'll have the approval of minutes from our Committee of the Whole meeting of
No,
Jan.
hold, wait. We,
Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot about excusing them.
Excuse Ms. Marcus and Mr. Burchett from this meeting.
We have a motion to excuse both of them. Roll call, please.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Doherty.
Yes.
Mrs. Witt.
yes.
Mrs. Allen.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Now we'll have the approval of minutes from the Committee of the Whole meeting for January 9th of 2025. Council has received previous copies of this minutes to this meeting, and does anyone have any changes or corrections? Hearing none, minutes are approved as submitted. Under the topics of discussion, first of all, we'll start out with the Finance Director. Do you have anything to report?
I have nothing at this time, thank you.
City Manager?
I have no items, Mr. Miller. Thank you.
Mayor?
I have nothing to report at this time.
Law Director?
No report, thank you.
Clerk of Council?
I have no report at this time.
Thank you all. We'll go into our business tonight. The first item is the purchase of a 2028 E-1 aerial ladder Quint, $1,705,095.
Just a couple dollars.
Chief?
This is replace our current aerial, it's 2009. If it makes it to 28, we will be lucky. Since 2017, we spent over 64,000 in repairs, and it's only got 17,000 miles on it. It breaks down, it just broke down over the weekend, they had to come in and fix it. So that's what looking to replace it for 1.7, I believe it's in your packet there, and a bigger justification, but I'm sure you didn't want me to read the whole thing to you. It's front and back, so. But, yep, that's what it is. They expect it to be here in the fall of 28, so hopefully. We are still slated for April of 26 to get that medic we ordered 2 years ago, so.
Is that mileage typical?
Normally you'd see more miles on it without it breaking down, but when it started breaking down a lot, Chief Cooper had moved it up to 30s to lessen the wear and tear on it, because we knew we wouldn't be able to get one for a couple years.
Right.
So its main purpose is to be at 29s, because that's where all our high rises are. But currently it's sitting up at 30s, where we only pull it if we have to, usually, so.
And Chief, excuse me, Chief, this is a budgeted item.
Yes, I'm sorry, this is a budgeted item.
Well, I'll make a motion that we have legislation drawn up to purchase a 2028 E1 aerial ladder Quint at $1,705,005.
You've heard the legislation request. Roll call, please.
Mr. Doherty.
Yes.
Mrs. Witt.
Yes.
Mrs. Allen.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Second item, codified ordinances, Merit System Commission rules.
Okay, so the Merit System Commission rules were originally adopted in 2005 and codified in Chapter 149 of the Marine Codified Ordinances. The Merit System Commission rules were revised in October of '24, and we are requesting legislation be prepared to authorize that codification.
You've heard the request from the Clerk of Council.
I'll make a motion that we have legislation prepared to move for the Merit System Commission rules to be entered into codified ordinances.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Yes.
Mrs. Allen.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Mr. Doherty.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes. Next item is a request for supplemental legislation.
Thank you. At the end of the year, when the Shared Resource Center was working on the end-of-year adjustments,
They planned and scheduled out what we believed we needed for the end of the year. When the 2025 Certificate of Available Resources was being compiled for the Montgomery County requirement, they noticed that there were some shortages in a couple of funds, one being the Parks and Rec Fund, the other was the Economic Development Fund. It's so difficult at the end of the year to plan out those things. They are requesting a supplemental legislation be provided for those shortfalls, and they have provided a memo in the packet explaining in detail their explanation of the shortages.
You've heard the request by the finance director for supplemental legislation. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion that we have legislation done for our next meeting for the supplemental of money.
It's to increase the revenues because the shortfalls in the revenues.
Right, I didn't look at it.
650,000.
Okay, for 650,000.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty, Mrs.
Yes.
Witt.
If I could correct the amount.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sorry, let me correct if you want to, or I will. It's 500,000.
Correct.
It's 150,000 for parks and 350,000 for the economic development. I apologize. It's 500,000 total.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, roll
So
call
if Ms.
then on the
Witt, if
correction.
Ms. Witt made that motion, then I would just have, to clarify the record, Ms. Witt amend her motion to 500,000 and then start the vote over again.
Make it Terry make it.
Okay.
Excuse me, the mayor.
I'll amend it to, what was it, 5,000?
500,000.
500,000.
Yes, split
Okay.
between the two funds.
Okay, roll call on the correct.
Okay, Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Ms. Worth, sorry, Mrs. Witt,
Yes,
and Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Final item is supplemental for the State Route 741 work.
So, the Ohio Department of Transportation project for the resurfacing of Springboro Pike from Arbor to North Lawn will commence in the summer of 2025 instead of the summer of 2026 that we originally thought. Project will be awarded on June 23rd of this year and will be constructed at the end of this summer. The funds for the capital improvement project are in the 2026 budget, but need to be moved to the 2025 budget. The city's expected portion of this project is $192,000. I recommend that supplemental appropriation and required legislation be drafted to add the $192,000 to the Ohio Department of Transportation Urban Paving, State Route 741 North Capital Budget.
And Lauren, that 192,000, that is what, 10 or 20% of the project cost?
The
Is
project
within-
is funded 80% by ODOT,
Right.
20% by the city.
Thank
Do you know
you.
where that money's coming from?
It'll be a
come back and
supplemental to the budget under the capital for engineering, but again, for clarification, we were initially informed by ODOT that it was gonna be a 2026 project.
Right.
They moved it up. If you were to look at our capital improvement plan, it identified these dollars in 2026. So dollars that we expected to spend in 26, we'll now spend in 25, which will lower the CIP in 2020.
You've heard the recommendation by the city engineer. Any other discussion?
I'll make a motion to prepare legislation for our next meeting for the MOT 741 resurfacing project to move that from 2026 budget to 2025.
You've heard the request. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy,
Yes.
Mr. Doherty,
Yes.
Mrs. Wood,
yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Is there any persons appearing before council?
Oh, come on.
Brett?
If not, staff report time. Any staff want to come up individually with any reports, comments? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for the louder, we appreciate it, really.
Christmas came to the fire department.
All righty, we will go to city manager. Anything further to report?
I have nothing further, thank you.
Law director?
No, Mr. Miller, thank you.
The acting finance director?
I have nothing else, thank you.
Mrs. Allen?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Mrs. Witt?
Stay safe, stay warm. That's all.
Mayor?
Nothing to report, thank you.
All right. The Donner?
Nothing to report, thank you.
And nothing more from me, so thank you for attending tonight's meeting. We will adjourn at 6:33 PM. Thanks for coming.